And, I should mention, when it comes to efforts by congressional Republicans and the Trump White House to try to fend off the Russia investigation, one of the things that's also been happening over the past few days is that the top Republican member of the Judiciary Committee in the House, remember, Republicans are in the minority there now, so the chairman of the Judiciary Committee is Democrat Jerry Nadler. The top Republican is a Republican congressman from Georgia. He personally, that top Republican from that committee, has unilaterally been releasing unredacted transcripts, or almost totally unredacted transcripts, from a whole bunch of different witnesses who have come before that committee for its part of the Russia investigation. And the transcripts he's been releasing are from witnesses who the Republicans in the Trump White House and the conservative media have been trying to vilify as terrible bad guys somehow in the Russia investigation. Today, for example, these Republicans released the 300-page long transcript of the testimony of the former top counterintelligence agent in the FBI, Peter Strzok. This was the Strzok testimony they released today. 2 days ago, they released the testimony, almost as long, from a top FBI lawyer named Lisa Page. A couple of days before that, they released the testimony of one of the top experts in the Justice Department on Russian organized crime, Bruce Ohr. And again, they picked those three. They picked Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Ohr because all of those public servants are people who the Republicans and the White House and conservative media have vilified, right? Have tried to turn into terrible, terrible bad guys because of their roles in the Russia investigation. And, it's, knock yourself out. You can try to turn anybody into a bad guy that you want. And especially when you've got access to privileged information that isn't public, that gives you an easy way to vilify people, right? You take little dribs and drabs, little specific allegations, phrases from here and there. And if people don't have access to the full record, they've only got access to what you're telling them about, it's easy to spin things and characterize things in as negative a way as possible. And they've been doing that for months now when it comes to these law enforcement and counterintelligence officials. But now, this congressman from Georgia, Doug Collins, has decided that unilaterally what he's going to do to stick it to the Democrats is he's going to release the whole transcripts from these witnesses. To the point, according to the Democrats, of rejecting suggested or requested redactions from the Justice Department when the Justice Department has asked for stuff to be held back because it's law enforcement or national security sensitive. Collins just says no, and he's been rejecting those redactions, just releasing the whole thing. And I know why he's doing it, but I'm not sure he's thought it through. I mean, taking an individual line or phrase, right, and posting it on Twitter and giving it to conservative media as if he's turned up these damning admissions. We've seen Congressman Collins do that with bits and pieces of these transcripts that he's released, but we've all got the whole transcripts now to read. And the whole transcripts definitely don't help their case when it comes to trying to make people like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Bruce Ohr look like bad guys. So, like, from the Lisa Page transcript, for example, there's this question. Are you aware of any FBI officials leaking information about this investigation before the election? Lisa Page, not to my knowledge. Question, did you make any disclosures about this investigation to the press or the public before Election Day? Lisa Page, no, ma'am. Question, why not? Lisa Page, it's both impermissible and it would be patently unfair. Thank you. Question, how do you think a disclosure to the press or to the public would have impacted Donald Trump's electoral prospects? Lisa Page, that's not mine to speculate on, ma'am. Question, well, on the basis of the information, would it have been damaging? Would it have been major? Lisa Page, yes, I would suspect so. Question, if someone at the FBI was trying to stop Donald Trump from being elected president, yourself or Peter Strzok or any of the others, do you think they could have publicly disclosed that Trump's campaign was under investigation for potentially colluding with Russian government actors? Lisa Page, that's what you would think. Question, so you're saying yes? Lisa Page, yes, ma'am. Question, but to your knowledge, no one at the FBI did disclose this fact publicly, correct? Lisa Page, no, ma'am. Question, would you consider this strong evidence that there was not a deep state conspiracy at the FBI to stop Donald Trump from being elected? Lisa Page, yes, ma'am. That and the fact that this is an extraordinarily conservative organization. The notion that there is an FBI deep state conspiracy about anything is laughable. Question, just to be clear. So you were not personally trying to stop Donald Trump from being president? Answer, oh no. Again, Republicans are releasing this transcript from Lisa Page because they think, whew, that's going to make her look terrible. Let's show the whole terrible truth about. I mean, on the one hand, this is fascinating. And on the other hand, this does not make her look bad. I mean, here she is, for example, explaining the urgency within the FBI of the Russia investigation that they were secretly conducting during the presidential campaign, and how that urgency was inflected by widespread expectations about whether or not Trump actually had any prospect of winning the election. She says, quote, "By which I mean, if he is not elected, to the extent that the Russians were colluding with members of his team, we're still going to investigate that, even without him being president. Because anytime the Russians do anything with a U.S. person, we care. And it is very serious to us. But if he becomes president, that totally changes the game. Because now he is the president of the United States. He's immediately going to start receiving classified briefings. He's going to be exposed to the most sensitive secrets imaginable. And if there was somebody on his team who, wittingly or unwittingly, is working with the Russians, that is super serious." Thank you, Lisa Page. No, seriously, thank you, Lisa Page. I mean, the circumstances under which it was released are contested, but I am glad to have this access to this information from your transcript. I don't know why Republicans think it makes you look bad. Also, in the Peter Strzok transcript released today, it's long and there's a ton in it. But there is, for example, again, something the Republicans think makes him look terrible, which I don't think most people are going to see it that way. There, for example, is a sort of hilarious back and forth that I can't put fully on television because there's a lot of swearing. But a Republican congressman is trying to get Peter Strzok to spell out why he expressed in a text message that it would be, forgive me, effing terrifying for Trump to actually be elected president. And Republicans are questioning him about that, and they clearly think they've got him nailed on something super bad about him expressing that it would be terrifying for Trump to be elected president. How terrible it is that Strzok is expressing that while he's part of the investigation into whether or not the Russians had successfully infiltrated Trump's campaign in order to install Trump in the White House because they had basically flipped people close to him. Why would you think that'd be bad? They have this whole back and forth about it. And at the end of it, you can actually just see in Strzok's own words, rather than Republicans' characterizations of it, why he would have been so effing terrified about the prospect of Trump's election. Here we go. Quote, "What did you mean by effing terrifying?" Peter Strzok, "I'm sorry?" Question, "What did you mean by effing terrifying?" Peter Strzok, "The prospect that candidate Trump might be elected president." Question, "In November, when you said it would be effing terrifying for him to become the president, you were investigating whether or not he had colluded, coordinated, or otherwise conspired with a foreign actor to interfere with the election." Peter Strzok, "The allegations that have been made public," he's being careful not to step on open investigations, but he says the allegations that have been made public are allegations that members of Trump's campaign may have been doing that. Question, "Then why in the world would you be talking about impeachment if you did not think that he, Trump specifically, had done anything wrong?" Peter Strzok, "Because, without getting into details here that are either classified or in the context of an ongoing investigation, my concern, based on the credible allegation that members of his campaign were actively colluding with the government of Russia, struck me as an extraordinary threat to America and represented," interruption with a question, "well, you had already," and he then finishes, "represented the most unbelievably severe and reprehensible sort of behavior that any American could engage in." Oh, so even if it wasn't at that point in the investigation, the prospect that Trump himself was colluding, it was people in his campaign, the prospect that he would get elected while people with his campaign were colluding with the Russian government in order to get the Russian government to help install Trump in the Oval Office, that would be the most unbelievably severe and reprehensible sort of behavior that any American could engage in. And so therefore, of course, it would be effing terrifying that that person might become president of the United States. Further questions? No wonder Peter Strzok had to be demonized and run out of the place, right? But now, thanks to the Republicans who think they've really nailed him here, we've got 300 pages of him in his own words. I don't think it's playing the way you guys want it to. Hey,
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.